Okay, so now Adrian used to do a lot of these, read off this for me.
Yep, sure. So this is the Conservation Commission meeting of Wednesday, June 15th, 2022. It is just after 6 p.m. And consistent with Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend the meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. And there's the logon information through the city website to the Zoom meeting, as well as alternative phone numbers if folks want to dial in. And there is your agenda, Mr. Chairman. If you want, I can provide a little brief.
That'd be great.
As you know, Adrian left the position of conservation agent on June 2nd. I was out of town at that time. So the office kind of covered inquiries as best as they could while I was out. I have set up scheduled office hours similar to that Adrian held for inquiries and reviews. So we've had a little bit of activity, but as you know, kind of on the good side is your next regular meeting is until July 20th. So most of the inquiries were related to things that were approved at your last meeting and a couple of new items that have come up. I will note the agenda was revised today. There's one other business item at the end of the agenda for the potential consideration of an emergency certificate, and we'll get to that at the end of the meeting. And I also like to just identify up front, we also received a request for a continuance for anybody that was interested in the 12 Sumner Street application. They have continued or requested that the commission continue that hearing to the July 20th meeting as well. So when we get to that on the agenda, you can make a motion to accept that continuance, but just want to make sure that if anybody was logged in and you can go have dinner and enjoy yourself for the evening because it will not be discussed this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. The next part of the meeting is the public comment period.
John, Rob, before you go on,
Sure.
I think this would be under administrative briefing. Did all the other commissioners receive a letter from Kim Smith referencing the plovers?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. How should we? I don't know if it went to the office or not. So how would we go about getting that letter? Her letter?
This is the plovers.
Yes.
Okay.
So what's the best way to get her letter into the record?
I would probably just seeing where Greg is playing agent the foreseeable future, I guess. I would just submit it to him so he can submit it to the new agent at some point. But at this point in time, it's just floating in space.
Yeah, I think it was copied to Adrian. So I think it is on file in the conservation office.
Okay. Bill, if you could make note that when we get a new agent or some other administrative period time, that you could just jot that down as something we can deal with. Make sure it gets filed properly so we know what happened. I'll put that on you. I don't know if he's got his mic on. I don't think he heard me. Okay, so next up is the public comment period of the meeting. This is the period where people are welcome to speak about conservation issues that are not, I repeat, not on tonight's agenda. Anyone who wishes to speak may do so now by hitting the raise your hand button at the bottom of your screen or hitting *9 on your phone or handheld device.
And I am not seeing any.
Okay. So seeing none, hearing none, I close the public comment period. Minutes review and approval. We have June 1, 2022.
Commissioner Jackson moves to approve the Conservation Commission meeting minutes for June 1, 2022 as amended.
Carpentier seconds.
So I'll run the roll call.
Yeah,
You do it?
No. I thought Barry.
No, you-
I
you do it. You do it, Greg.
Okay, member Charpentier,
Yes,
member Cook,
Yes,
member Gradwall,
Yes.
member Sergeant,
Yes.
member Gullo,
Yes.
member Jackson,
Yes,
and member Sherman.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0.
Okay. Off to continued business. Next up is RDA 1703, Salt Island Road, Salt Island LLC. Evan Govenderen, rep of DeRosa Environmental representing or consulting representing. They're requesting a continuation to July 20th.
Commissioner Jackson moves to continue RDA 1703 Salt Island to the Conservation Commission meeting of July 20th, 2022.
Excuse me, may I make a comment before we vote on that?
Sure.
I just want to, I guess reiterate what our former agent Adrian said. Based on the last time that this RDA came before us, it seemed quite apparent that the RDA was not going to be acceptable and it would end up being an NOI. And I'm just thinking that by continuing this, it looked like it was going towards a positive determination. And the agent, Adrian Leonard, had mentioned that if it was a positive determination, then the posts that were already in place would have to be removed. And my just concern is that by continuing it, we're delaying that removal.
Well, may I speak, Rob?
Sure.
I think you're absolutely right. However, they have every right to continue this for 2 years.
Yeah.
So there's nothing we can do about that.
Okay.
So,
After 2 years, they could we can then remove it from the agenda or they can finally move forward, but we can't do anything at this time.
All right. Thank you for that clarification.
you're welcome. so
Charpentier
we-
seconds the motion.
Thank you, Linda.
Okay, roll call vote. Member Charpentier,
Yes,
member Cook,
yes,
member Gradwall,
Yes.
member Sergeant,
Yes.
member Gullo,
Yes.
member Jackson,
Yes,
and member Sherman.
Yes.
Okay, continue to July 20th.
Thank you. I'll be recusing on the next one, so if you mind picking it up, that'd be great, Angel.
okay. Next up is NOI 0282827 105 Wingashiek Road, lots A and B. 125 Wingashiek LLC, represented by Joel Favaza of Seaside Legal. Do we have Mr. Favaza?
We do, and I will bring him in as a panelist.
Great. And Mr. Favaza, if you could give your name and address for the record and summarize where we are again, I'd appreciate it.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Joel Favaza. I am an attorney at Seaside Legal Solutions with an address of 123 Main Street in Gloucester. I am here speaking again tonight about 105 Wingashiek. And when we last left off a month ago, the city was going to hire a third-party review. It's my understanding from emails I received from the city today that nothing has been done in that regard. And it's my understanding from what Mr. Cavamatore just said that you are 6 weeks out from your next meeting at the end of July. And so my request tonight is, you know, in light of all you have before you, which again, I'll summarize quickly. You have a delineation done by Gateway Consultants, which is a trusted local engineering firm that you've accepted previously for a larger house closer to the primary dune. You've accepted this delineation once in an order of conditions issued by this commission. You have a letter from Mike Seecamp, another trusted, experienced wetland scientist who concurs with the delineation you have on this plan and also concurs that the mitigation proposed is consistent with what this commission typically requests of applicants. You have an approval in hand from the Board of Health for both septic systems. You have an approval in hand from the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program, saying that as long as we don't build during certain parts of the year, it will not be problematic. Your approval in hand from the Zoning Board of Appeals with specific note that they prefer the smaller houses being proposed tonight, and that's been proposed for quite some time now. You have 28 pages of letters in support, and you have in the record approval for 18,500 square feet of structures, driveway, et cetera. And we're asking tonight instead for approval of roughly 14,000 square feet, further pulled back from the resource area than what is out there. And so I just ask again that this commission consider taking everything it has already in the file and saying, a third-party review may have been nice, but there have already been so many eyes on this set of plans. And basically every one of them, with the exception of this commission so far, has given it an approval. And so this is the last approval these people need to be able to pivot from that large house that you've already approved and allow them to construct these two more modest homes that, again, have been thoroughly vetted throughout city departments and within the realm of the wetlands ordinance, both local and the state wetland regulations. And so again, my request tonight is to forego the third-party review and vote on the merits of this project, given all the information this commission has received over the past few months. But obviously I defer to the commission and absolutely understand that's not for me to decide.
Thank you, Mr. Favaza. Greg, we usually do another roll call now for commission comments.
Public
And I
comment?
apologize, I didn't realize that I had my camera off that whole time.
That's okay.
Member Charpentier,
No questions at this time. No comments.
Member Cook,
No, I have no problems. I'm ready to move forward.
Member Gradwell,
I'm ready to move forward.
Member Sargent,
I understand Joel's concerns, and I think they're well founded. I still have concerns that where the septic systems were, there wasn't any discussion of mitigation of trees planted, in the place of trees. And I'm still worried about that locally isolated land subject to flooding, particularly on the eastern side at the 8-foot contour. I think the driveway there really would impact that 8-foot contour. I think those are my comments, but I really understand Joel's concerns.
okay, Member Jackson,
I am also sympathetic to Mr. Favaza. And I understand all of what he said I do take exception to nothing has happened for 6 weeks on the third-party review. The prior agent contacted several people who would not review it. They did not feel that this was a feasible project due to there being new construction on a primary dune, which is apparently not allowed under DEP standards. And nowhere in his letter does Mr. Seecamp mention that fact. He's very careful in his wording, and I agree with everything he said. But nowhere does he mention the fact that this is being built on a primary dune. And while one house could be considered a replacement for the existing, there's the other component that the other house can't be. And therefore, I honestly don't see how we can approve this project. It's the only thing holding it up. I think I'm done.
okay, Member Sherman,
No comments.
So that's where we are. Mr. Favaza, Greg, do you have any input on this?
again, kind of late to the game. I did make a recent inquiry. I didn't realize that there was such an issue with securing a third-party reviewer. If that's, I always feel like that's a benefit for both the decision of a body as well as for an applicant to either confirm that something is approvable, or if there are issues, it gives the applicant the opportunity to try to address them. If the applicant and the commission want me to pursue that, we do have a little bit of a hiatus I can certainly move in that direction and try to secure a third-party reviewer. Or if you feel you have enough information to act at this point, you can do that as well.
Mr. Vaza,
Oh, sorry, no,
Oh.
Mr. Gravel wanted to speak. I just want to respond to the comments when I have an opportunity. Thank you.
who wanted to speak? Mr. Gradwell?
Gradwell wanted to speak.
Yes, okay.
You know, there's something to be said about the fact that none of the reviewers that she contacted want to take this on, which indicates that it's not a smart decision. And I'm going to join camp with you and believe that we should have a third-party review. We are doing something that is unusual in breaking a piece of property that's in this primary dune area and trying to force it through for economic reasons.
Would anyone else like to add any additional comments? Okay, Mr. Favazza?
Do we have any comments from DEP related to this?
So that's one of the points I was going to raise, Mr. Cook, is that, you know, if you look at, I just checked now to make sure I'm not speaking out of school. I just pulled the technical comments are approval dependent on project meeting performance standards for coastal dune. And you have a letter in your file from Mike Seacamp reviewing it saying these do. And any conditions required by the natural heritage endangered species, which you also have in your file. And so I appreciate there has not been an independent, you know, beyond Mike Seacamp, who obviously was retained and paid, you know, by the client. But again, as I mentioned in previous meetings, Mike Seacamp's not about to throw away his credibility or licensure for the sake of, you know, 105 Wingershik, right?
No,
So, there are no other comments to DEP. And if in fact, you know, if in fact this is the position that there's concern that this is not actually within the guidelines, DEP will flag it and we'll say, hey, you know, Gloucester, we saw your approval on that one, but we disagree, right? Like this isn't if in fact that fear is founded, even if I'm fortunate enough to walk out of here with an approval, DEP, you know, looks at all the approvals that are voted on by this commission. And so that being said, to just quickly touch upon the comments that were made as to the isolated wet area. So while I appreciate those concern, you know, the hydrology was checked to make sure that it was in fact an isolated wet area. And the reality is there is no buffer zone to an isolated wet area. They're only recognized under the local ordinance. They're not recognized in the state regulations. And under the local ordinance, there's no buffer zone to them. So although part of that driveway is, you know, within a few feet of the outer edge of the isolated wet area as shown on the plan, that is wholly consistent with the local wetland ordinance. And there isn't any you know, ordinance or policy in place that provides for a buffer or requires a buffer. Again, given the remote nature of this and the likelihood that this is probably, you know, seasonally used, I believe as compared to other driveways this commission reviews, this driveway is probably going to be used, you know, more lightly, not to underplay that it is in fact still a driveway. I suppose if there was a condition that said, hey, pitch the driveway, you know, to the right to make sure that, you know, anything that does kind of run off this gravel, you know, runs away from the isolated wet area. That's a very easy condition to issue and a very easy condition for the applicant to adhere to should they be, you know, approved. And then again, back to the comments raised about, you know, I think the issues whether this is, you know, redevelopment or new construction. And again, it's a bit of a fiction, right? If this cottage was taken down, as was the first proposal, right? And I don't know, rough math, quadrupled in size between the cottage and the original thing that was proposed, you know, that's redevelopment. But simply because these two smaller buildings aren't connected by a breezeway, you know, all of a sudden there's just this treatment like it's a completely different project. This isn't a subdivision where we're building a brand new road and creating lots where there's just been, you know, undeveloped land, right? This is a developed double lot, and the amount of improvement on the lot, again, is gonna be less than what you've already said okay to once. And but for a connector between the two buildings seems to be raising these unnecessary red flags that DEP is not raising. DEP in their initial review has not said, you can't do this. This is not redevelopment. In fact, all they said was, hey, pay us a second fee. If you remember back in October of last year, when we first filed, the only red flag we got was they wanted more fees, which, but is typical and which we happily paid. But otherwise, DEP has looked at this, right? And so I don't want to read into the fact that other third-party reviewers have declined. And again, that declination was last round. That was like back in, gosh, the spring, because as this board may recall, I was before you beginning of May, I think on the 4th, and we discussed Mike Seecamp's letter. And there was discussion then about maybe foregoing the third-party review, but you needed more time to look at what was in the file. We got back on the 18th, the wind had kind of shifted and the commission was kind of back to, we need a third-party review. But again, that was, a month ago. And at this point, it becomes unfair to the applicant if they provide you everything they can, including a third-party review that's just not hired by the city directly, to say, like I said, no one else seems to have a problem with this. DEP hasn't commented negatively. Board of Health hasn't commented negatively. Zoning board didn't comment negatively. 28 letters of support. If I think we're okay here. I know it's not, perfect, and this may look a little unusual, but I think we're okay. No one's raising red flags, except when I get here on a Wednesday night, I'm asking the commission to consider the pragmatic side of this, which is these two houses, and this is not an economic argument. This is a trying to keep the peace. We're being straight with everybody. We're trying to keep the peace out there and do what's right for the neighborhood. It happens to be better for the environment also, which should help it be a slam dunk at this commission. And so I'm just asking for some pragmatic approach to this, saying no one's raising a red flag about this project from all the reviews that it's had from all the various departments, both related and unrelated to Concom. If this commission can pragmatically look at this, go, yeah, these two houses further back from the dune make way more sense than what we already said yes to, and I can just get over this hurdle, I think you've done right by the wetland ordinance, you've done right by the mass regulations, I think you've done right by the Wingershik neighborhood. I think this is a win for everybody, and so just ask, for that tonight so we can get this moving forward. Thank you.
And I appreciate everything you said. And I recognize that everybody else has approved this, but nobody else has had responsibility for approving the construction in a primary dune, and that's ours. I can't disagree with the points that you have made. Bureaucracy doesn't always make sense, and you should know that as an attorney. And I'm still kind of stuck. I would feel better making a decision with a third-party reviewer. What I would ask is that we have this one more chance for a third-party reviewer. And then on July 20th, you have every right whenever you want to ask for a decision. So you can do it tonight if you want, or you can give us until July 20th and, longer than that if you want, but that would be my feeling. Greg, can we go around through commissioners again and see if there's any additional input?
Sure. Member Charpentier.
I guess my question is, if we get a third-party review, can we put some time? I think we have to put some kind of a time frame on this. Who is going to push this? Who is going to get that person in here? How quickly can we get it done? I just don't think it's, I just can't see dragging this thing out for another couple of months. And the second thing, if we do get that third-party reviewer, and that opinion is different from the third-party review that we have now, then where are we? And then what's the next step after that?
Well, let me respond quickly to that before we go on to the next. First of all, I would hope to have one in place by July 20th. Second of all, if his opinion differs, it's not going to differ on the primary dune issue because Mr. Seecamp didn't really address the primary dune issue. So I guess would be my response to that. Mr. Seecamp responded that the mitigation is what we normally expect. And there was some other point that he made, but he did not address the new construction on a primary dune. And therefore, that's what I'm looking for guidance on. Next up.
Member Cook. No comment. Member Gradwell.
No comment at this time.
Okay, Member Sergeant?
My comment is that I agree with Ann Joe, except that I have exception to the fact that we should leave this to DEP, as Attorney, Favazza said. That's a quicksand approach. I don't think that was well formulated. And again, I think that the driveway on the right, which comes very close to elevation 8, which understandably is the elevation for ACEC, I don't think is seasonal. And I think that that driveway would encroach on that elevation 8. And I really think that needs to be addressed. I also think that the mitigation needs to be addressed, again, for the lack of trees where septic systems as well as driveways are going to be proposed. And the applicant can move forward, but he's taking his own risk. Thank you.
Okay, Member Jackson, if you want to speak again.
No, I've had my say.
Okay, and Member Sherman.
I agree with Co-Chair Jackson, and I too would still like to see another third-party review.
Okay, Mr. Favazza. That
So I
leaves.
appreciate it. So let's make sure, because you had asked for this and I'm inclined, obviously, I'm not looking to force a no out of anybody, right? That does no one any good. I am asking for some, I can't make any promise anything, but I'm asking for some understanding that if, we come back late July and for one reason or another, because either everyone's on vacation in the industry and you can't find anybody in less than 8 weeks, or, poor Greg, who has got like 5 different hats on right now, like isn't able to, lock someone in, then at some point this commission says, okay, we've been making this applicant wait months. We have to kind of make a decision on what we have here. I will, in my own time, try and get, again, all I can work with is the people we work with, but I can certainly get CCAMP to update his letter in the meantime as a backup and then specifically address the questions that have been addressed tonight. Again, I don't know if that's to be satisfactory to the board in absence of a third party review, but I just ask that, the applicant being willing to go ahead and wait another 6 weeks, that we kind of all, informally agree as a group, 6 weeks from now, we'll figure out a way to get this thing disposed of, yes or no. That's fair. We're okay.
Yes, I agree with you. I do think that's fair. I appreciate your tolerance on this. And let's go to continue on to July 20th. And if we can't get a third party reviewer, I think that's significant in itself. And let's move forward that way. Okay,
Thank you.
okay. Linda, would you like to make a motion?
Charpentier moves to continue NOI 0282827, 105 Wingershik Road, lots A and B, to the commission meeting of July 20.
Gradwell seconds.
Okay, roll call vote. Member Charpentier,
Yes,
Member Cook,
Yes,
Member Gradwall,
Yes,
Member Sergeant,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes,
and Member Sherman.
Yes,
Okay,
Thank you.
okay. Rob, you can rejoin the meeting.
Back.
All right.
Next up. Where are we? Oh, here we go. Notice for intent 28-2848, 12 Sumner Street, Heidi Fialo, John Judd Gateway Consultants, Inc. representing. I believe this is going to be continued to July 20th, 2021, 22.
Yes, Commissioner Jackson moves to continue NOI 0282848 at 12 Sumner Street to the Conservation Commission meeting of July 20th.
Charpentier seconds.
Greg, roll call?
rookie move there. I was muted.
You never
Member
have a
Charpentier.
commissioner like that. Come on, I mean,
Member Charpentier,
Yes,
Member Cook,
yes,
Member Gradwell,
yes,
Member Sergeant,
yes,
Member Gullah,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
yes,
Member Sherman. Okay,
Next up is notice of intent 0282853, 81 Dennison Street, William Manuel Wetlands Land Management representing. The applicant requests a withdrawal without prejudice.
okay, Commissioner Jackson moves to approve a withdrawal without prejudice for NOI 0282853 at 81 Dennison Street.
Charpentier seconds?
roll call vote. Member Charpentier,
Yes.
Member Cook,
yes,
Member Gradwell,
yes,
Member Sergeant,
yes,
Member Gullah. I'll recuse from that.
okay, recusal, and Member Sherman. Okay, 6-0
Next up.
with 1 recusal.
Next up, notice of intent 0282854, 624 Weston Avenue, Dockside Properties LLC, John Judd of Gateway Consultants representing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, John Judd, engineer with Gateway Consultants, representing the applicant.
is the
With
screen
this,
displaying? Are
I'm
we
sorry?
displaying anything on the screens right now?
Yeah, we're
I-
just seeing ourselves, Greg.
I'm sorry, I didn't know what you want me to put up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Greg, if it's okay, could you, if you have the file, the digital file, can you put up the
Yep.
septic? Okay,
Yep,
thank you.
hold on 1 second.
While Greg is doing that, just to recap, we appeared before this commission on the 1st of June to describe this septic system replacement on the property. It's a very small property, 5,900 square feet. We're upgrading the system with an advanced treatment, pressure distributed system that's been approved by the Board of Health. At that time, we were waiting for a file number from DEP, which we've since obtained. And at the time, there was some discussion with some of the neighbors relative to a pipe. If you remember, in the deed, as I read the deed to the commission, the easement basically is for the benefit of this property to discharge to the neighbor's property. So it's just a small pipe that leaves the foundation. We're not going to be impacting, obviously, anything behind the house other than replacing the existing sewer pipe, which is a solid 4-inch pipe. So that any pipe that may exist through that deed, and there's no maps indicating where that pipe is, we would not be disturbing anything behind the house other than replacing that existing sanitary pipe to go into this the new components for the system, which again have been approved by the Board of Health. So we're not increasing any impervious areas here. We're not creating any more runoff. Everything is going to be a pervious grass surface. And again, obviously getting this contaminated system out of the groundwater and putting in advanced treatment systems. So I can answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, next up on this is usually public comment period. So this is a period where anyone may be able to speak for or against the project at 624 Weston Avenue. You may do so now by hitting the raise your hand button at the bottom of your screen or hitting *9 on your phone or handheld device.
And I see an Amy Hubbard. I'll allow her to speak.
Hello? You're still muted, Amy. There you
Can you
go.
hear me now?
Yep, you're quiet though. Can you turn your, whatever you're using up a bit?
I will bring it closer. Is
There
that
we go.
better? Okay, so I'm at
Perfect.
630 Western Avenue. And since we last met, it's come to my attention that the plan for the new septic system isn't valid due to it being developed using an erroneous plan of land that was created in 1981 by Paul Stanley. The plan states the frontage of 624 is 86.55 when actually it is 80.08, which is a difference of more than 6 feet. And in addition, the plan does not take into account the standing water up against 624 against the house.
Explain
So-
that, explain that a little more. What are you commenting on? The
So
water against the house?
yeah, the water, the plan doesn't take into account all the water that's there. There's nothing stating that it's going to be fixed. And the only options are to either let the cellar flood or drain it onto my property is kind of what I'm seeing. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. And, you know, for me, before I would be willing to allow someone to come onto my property to install a septic system, I want that issue of flooding to be addressed. And at this point, I have contacted an attorney who wasn't able to attend tonight. And I would like, again, a site visit and to ask for a continuance so that all of these questions can be addressed. You know, the stated boundaries in the deed are incorrect and based on an error made by Paul Stanley, 1981. You know, and that being said, I want to be clear that I am not opposed to this property being fixed. I'm not opposed to the septic going in. It's going to be in the best interest of everyone in the neighborhood, but to have the project done correctly, so you know the rest of us aren't having to remedy issues.
Ms. Hubbard, aside from that other little discrepancy in the lot line or whatever, is this all about that pipe still? Is this what we're still talking about, this pipe that discharges onto your property?
Yeah, so there is on the side of the house, there is a pipe that pulls the water up from the cellar and just pumps it back to the cellar and out the back.
Okay.
And then that eventually drains onto the property, my property, and the adjacent property next to 624.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
And also I have James Cook here as well, who has some information.
Say that again?
James Cook is here as well with some information.
Oh, okay. Is he speaking for you? Is that what? You're
He's
gonna hand
speaking
him the phone is what you're doing?
Exactly. He doesn't
Okay.
Zoom, so he's here with me.
Okay. Name and address for the record, please, whoever you are.
My name's James Cook. I live
Yeah.
at 622 Western. I'm a direct abutter on the east.
Mhm.
All right, so as Amy said, we had a chance finally to take a look at this stuff, and there are a number of problems with this plan, one being this border issue with Amy. I've done a lot of research on the deeds here over the last week, and I've done a lot of research on deeds in general, so I know what I'm doing. And of the deeds that I looked at, and I think I found almost every last one, start going back to 1873 on this property, when it was first subdivided by Lorenzo Story for his son-in-law. And so the deeds that I got prior to 1981, when Paul Stanley produced the plan you're basing this on, there were 9 deeds that described it as 75 feet. In 1963, there were 7 deeds that described it. Since after 1963, there are 7 deeds that describe it as 80 feet, because in 1963, the neighbor Morley sold to John Anderson, who owned the property at the time, a 5 by 70 foot strip along that western border so that they could put in a drainage system from the street above ground as a ditch and carry street water that was coming out of a spring in front of the house down to the brook. And so he granted him this strip of land and gave him an easement to be able to get the water across and into the brook in that back left corner. At the same time, they also had an easement in there for a drain that was in the basement. And if you open the bulkhead door, you'll see it. Okay, and it goes from there in a southwesterly direction down to the 5 foot on the left-hand side of the property and connects into there and drains into the brook. It will be running right through your tanks, right through your leaching field. And so if you remove it, you got to make sure that the thing is taken care of so it isn't continuing to seep into the brook or into the basement. Now, in regards to what's going on with the current water situation, and that's the thing that we're concerned about, is among other things. But the fact is, this plan does not take into account those drains, which you could easily find, okay, or talk to the neighbors. My family's owned the property next door for the last 80 years, and I know a lot about both properties. So on the other side of the house, there is a pump that sends water out up at the upper right side of the house facing my house, which is only 8 feet away. It goes into the ground, down along the border, and then comes up behind 624's back of their house. There is a kick out there, which has now been opened up, and that's where the water's coming out of the house and into the yard. And the yard is submerged for the 10 square feet that's the backside of that house, from against the house down flowing into my property at the base of my septic system and into Amy's property, who's taking most of it. And if this problem isn't solved, how can you put more water into the ground there and allow this problem to exist while you're adding more water? This is a wet spot that is wet 24/7, 365 from the pumping. The pumping never stops except when they stop paying the electric bill. And so that basement is flooded a number of times. There's an oil tank in there, and they just keep pumping and pumping. We suspect the oil tank rusted and ruptured and pumped into that brook. So this are our concerns. We don't want his water problem to be our water problem. And if you don't address it now while you're adding more structures to that property in the ground and are not addressing this water problem, you're just creating this as a permanent problem for the neighbors. And we feel that this needs to be addressed. So Amy's, as she told you, is retained a lawyer who we're going to be giving everything we got to, and let's let him get up to speed and see where we stand on this. What we're looking for is a solution to that water problem before the system goes in, so that it isn't something that's passed on to the next owner of the property, and nothing gets done, and we end up dealing with their problem, or the new owner comes in crying hardship. Either way, we do not want the water problem from that property, and we're having to endure it right now because it's basically an absentee landlord. So that's our concern for that. And we would be happy to discuss this on a site visit. We don't have to go on the property if they don't want us to, because it's so small, you can see everything from the neighboring properties. And you can see that the water that's just pouring out of the back of the place, unless they shut the pumps off. And I'll explain where all the drainage work is. I can point it out. I saw the system go in. The original system that has the hole in the bulkhead floor that drains down to the southeast or southwest through your leaching field plugged up. And a previous owner had roto-rooted it and it started working again. The owner before Darlene McCarthy at Dockside was Chris Ring, and Chris Ring put in the system that's now pumping. And it never has worked because he brought it down to the backside of his property and dead-ended it in the dirt below ground. And so it was plugged from the very beginning and never worked. And it failed. He put an above ground system that was running over my property, and that was a temporary system. When that failed, they put in a sump pump and pumped it to the left over the border into Amy's yard. So this has been an ongoing problem for us, and we think that now is the time to solve this before it gets passed on to more people.
Okay, so I appreciate it.
I'm also asking for a continuance and for a site visit.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay, anyone else other than, I know Amy's hand's still up. Anyone else, Greg, looking to speak, or?
They're still raised hand.
Mm-mm.
Greg?
Yes, there is another raised hand,
Okay.
and it's Christy Rosso.
Okay. Hello, Chrissy. Hello? You gotta unmute yourself.
This is new. We didn't
Yeah.
have that last.
All
There
right.
you
can
go. Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me at this point?
Yep.
Great. All right. Yeah, just a brief comment, and I guess I had a brief question for Mr. Judd, who actually did our system many years before. I wanted to just point out that, you know, our land, and I live, again, my name is Alberto Rosso, and I live at 632 Western Avenue. My wife and I have been here. Our family has been here for the last 40 years, and the driveway in the front of our property juts out at the tail end of the stream. And so, having heard all of this, obviously we're happy that, and we certainly want, you know, the people who live in the house at 624 to be able to install the proper system for drainage. It is a very fragile system, as we've come to know, or increasingly with any substantial rainstorm, the drain, because that's the part of our property that juts out onto the tail end of that brook, and it runs out of, you know, it runs down into 127. And what we've witnessed more increasingly over time, over several years, is that we get significant flooding right there. So it is a pretty fragile system. We are downhill. We are downhill from the project that is being proposed. And so, of course, we're very interested in making sure that it's properly drained, because we will see it. We just, with a neighbor, a broken pipe on the street that goes to her property, Amy Hubbard's property, and even though it was a pinhole, it had been flooding for quite some time and into the street, past our driveway, having to deal with this over the winter, where things freeze right at the driveway. So it's been a lot of time and effort, and hopefully now at this point, we've gotten it resolved. So whatever drainage system is being proposed, we are hoping that you take into consideration the fragility of that that area of land right there. We are downhill, and we know, I looked at the plans, we know where the leaching field is proposed to be put, so it's pretty fragile. Any additional fluid is going to create some system there. So that's it. My question is about what we had heard about the underground spring that actually for the last few years has been coming out onto the street. And it's just been leaking out there and leaking out there and leaking out there. And then all of a sudden recently, there's no leaking there at all. So I'm wondering, where did that go? Those are our
Okay, are you done?
Yes, those are our comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with their hand up, Greg?
That's it.
Okay. All right, so there's obviously some concern here, Mr. Judd, about what's going on over there, and I don't know anything about these 6 feet, 4 feet. I'm assuming this pipe is just for some sort of sump pump. That being said, with the concerns that are being raised, I would suggest maybe we continue this so you can look at it a little more clearly, or is nothing else?
If I could, Mr. Chairman, we've been through all this at the last meeting. It's the same concerns. I think what Mr. Cook would like is a site visit with your board. If you'd like to have it, you feel free.
Okay.
This is a septic system. We're not adding any more bedrooms. We're not adding any impervious area. We're just trying to fix it. We're not adding any more fluids. This is a state-of-the-art system that's going to improve the situation. If there's historic flooding problems here, which obviously the neighbors feel there are, then that should be addressed, but we're not proposing anything. What you have before you is what's proposed. If there's going to be any changes of piping or sump pumps, then we'd have to come back before you, but we're not doing that.
Okay.
So
All right,
we-
then why don't we continue for a
close it.
sidewalk? I'd like to see what's going on too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going, but, you know, as far as a stream or a spring breaking out into Western Ave is, you know, we're trying to fix a situation here that's polluting the groundwater. I mean, it's been approved by the Board of Health. You know, there's obviously historic problems with the previous owner, with the neighbors, or maybe at least one neighbor, but they're gone. And the plan of land was stamped by a land surveyor, in which we show the dimensions at the Registry of Deeds. I mean, I'm pretty sure Mr. Cook is not a licensed land surveyor, so he really can't speak to any of this. But, you know, we just request that you close the public hearing and take a vote, please.
Okay. Greg, can we go to roll call, commissioner comments?
Sure thing. Member Charpentier,
No comments.
member Cook,
Yeah, and we had this discussion last time, and I know several of the neighbors are pretty adamant about pipes running out. One even insists that the pipes are going to go where the new system's gonna go. We need to make sure if we do move forward with this, that somehow we need to be aware of any additional pipes. The neighbors swear that they're there. And if you know, what we don't want to have them do, and Adrian had discussed this too, is if there's any pipes discovered, they cannot replace them and put them back into draining down into the stream. And that's a big concern, because that's going to create additional problems for the people that are there. So somehow in those order of conditions, I don't know if we have somebody inspect it when they're opening it up or somehow, but we need to make sure that if there's any additional pipes, then I don't know. I don't know if we stop the work, but as Adrian stated, we cannot allow the work to go forward knowingly having pipes draining into the wetlands. I mean, maybe this, I think a site visit would be good if the person's willing to let us go out and look at the property. I mean,
Well, I think
John,
the applicant said you can see everything right from their yard, so no.
yes, but if the pipes are, as they said, if they're pumping from some pumps outside, we're not going to see that unless they have the drain pipes outside.
Right.
If they have underground pipes running out there, which the neighbor seems to think that there are, the only way we could do that is looking at the where their bulkhead is.
If I could, Bill, there's no way you or I can determine where those are until the process is started with the excavators. Absolutely, it's an acceptable condition. If pipes, if and when pipes are discovered, then the city be notified, whether it's the agent or certainly the health agent's going to be there. But you know, Mr. Cook has already said it's coming from the northerly corner of the house, in between his house, and it goes out back toward along his property line. We're not doing any work over there. We're not proposing any work there. So, but we certainly will accept any condition that this board decides to implement or put into the order conditions, that the city officials be notified prior to any further work. And we would put a hold on work until things are satisfactorily addressed by to the agent's satisfaction.
Okay, who's next, Greg?
member Gradwall,
Member Gradwall, along with Mr. Sargent, took a walk over there. And items like the sump pump, you can hear going all the time. You can see it and we were there during a relatively dry week.
Mhm.
But the big problem, Mr. Cook deserves a continuance. He brought to my attention one argument on the plans, and I pulled up the deed from when it transferred from Darlene McCarthy to the Dockside Properties. And at that time, it says that it's 80.08 feet. And
If I could,
On Western Avenue. And Mr. Judd's plan says that it's 86.55 feet.
if I could, Mr. Gradwell, I just want to point you up to the deed. It says, you're exactly right, first of all, on those dimensions. And it says, together with such other land as shown on the plan entitled Plan of Land for Paul Stanley, recorded, and it shows with that 86-foot dimension. So what the licensed land surveyor does is they do a survey of all surrounding properties. So it says, including other land as shown on the record plan, which is on file and that was done in 1981. So the plan always holds in the registry of deeds. So it's a licensed surveyor recorded plan. So with all due respect, I think this board should not go down that avenue as far as the plan of land and dimensions. I think they need to stay objective with the wetland resource area that they're trying to protect. Thank you.
Okay, who's next? Mr. Barry, you good? Do you have any other comments?
I'm not a registered land surveyor, and I did not go about anything else on there. I pulled up a deed that was registered on 7/08/14, and that shows that. I think that we should just give them their hiring an attorney. I think that we have to give them the time to take a look at it.
Okay. Who's next, Greg?
Member Sergeant.
I'm going to enter the breach. My general impression is that this is a tough site, and wetland resources, as well as existing properties, much better served with this upgrade of an existing on-site wastewater septic system. And note that no additional flow is proposed. My apologies to Commissioner Sherman, who indicated an interest in having a formal site visit of this NOI. On June 10th, I was contacted by Commissioner Gradwell and a director butter to inquire if I was available for an informal site visit. Fortunately, I had some free time that morning. This was after a 1-inch rainfall event overnight. During this informal site visit, it was noted that this building has a functioning sump pump that was clearly seen as well as heard from Western Avenue. Based on plain view inspection, where physical access was allowed by a direct abutter, no pipes were observed within the rock line channel in the back of the property. However, it seemed likely that in the past, there was drainage piping leading from the basement to the stream in order to alleviate a very high neighborhood groundwater table. This was previously a bog, the whole neighborhood. It's a neighborhood problem. I suggested to be a condition for approval that in the event that any drainage piping is uncovered during the upgrade of the septic system, that it be removed in order to protect the stream from any future pollution. Thank you.
What's up, Greg?
Okay, Member Gullo.
Here we go. Yeah, this is a tricky one. When I first bought my house here in Gloucester, I made the same mistake. Instead of pumping water out of my basement, and promptly the DPW came by and told me what I was doing wrong. So for something as simple as that, first of all, I don't know if this might be a DEP problem, but I understand where Mr. Judd is coming from. He's asking to put in a septic system. He's not really required, I would say, other than, his clients potentially wanting to do right for the neighborhood. But I think what he's saying is this: I'm just putting a septic system before you that needs to be to replace something that has failed. It'll probably actually make the wetland in that area, stream, intermittent stream, bog, probably better. But there is an issue here that, and I don't know, maybe it's a DPW thing, but I mean, I don't know. I feel like we need to kind of vote on this thing as a septic system that we're being put before us. But I'm also the neighbors are concerned. This could cause some other things. So I'm really stuck myself. I think I would like, if the applicant's willing to give it to me, just one more bite for myself to go see this before we make a final decision. I wouldn't get into surveyors with anybody here. That's not our job. If lands, they need to make, they're the professionals. They need to make their judgments, their rules. We are here to worry about whether or not this is going to impact the resource. So with that, would the applicant be willing to give me a stay of execution, so to speak, and let me go out one more time?
Oh, hang on,
Absolutely.
Bob. I haven't
If-
made. comments yet.
Excuse me. I'm
That's
sorry.
okay.
Does Andrew want to speak?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes, I
sorry.
would like to speak. I think Rob is absolutely right. I think we're dealing with two separate issues here. We can only contemplate the project that is before us. We can't contemplate all this other stuff. That being said, two other things. That being said, you also cannot discharge into a resource area. You can't discharge onto somebody else's property. It is up to you to manage water on site. I don't know whose responsibility, whether it's ours or DPW's, but those seem to be violations of whatever regulation that is. Therefore, I think those need to be pursued separately. If in the process of replacing the septic system, we come across pipes that are draining, that's a different issue. That then becomes part of ours. But I think we're dealing with two very separate issues here. And I don't think we have any control right now over the flooding issues, draining issues, without considering it a violation separate from the septic the septic system installation. Now, I've done my comments.
And Member
So-
Sherman,
One more.
Member Sherman.
Oh, yeah.
I have no comments other than, Mr. Sergeant, no offense taken.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Judd, are we, could I ask you or your
Yes.
client to continue? slightly?
Absolutely. I just don't want to hear the same, non-pertinent issues with the septic
I
system.
completely understand it. I get it.
So absolutely, Mr. Chairman, if the board needs another 2 weeks, I'm going to be here anyway. So
Okay,
they waited this long to have the system installed. So absolutely. I just didn't want to have this situation where we're just chasing our tails. If they need to hire an attorney, then they need to hire the attorney, and the attorney should be here.
Right.
Or they should file a civil matter against the owner. This is a septic system replacement. This is, I think they're talking about historical groundwater issues in this neighborhood, and these houses are awfully close to each other. We're just trying to remedy a situation. That's what I say, but absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
okay, thank you. So with that, then, can we get a motion to continue the project at 624 Western Ave?
Yes, Commissioner Jackson moves to continue NOI 0282854 at 624 Western Ave and Mr. Judd, it will be the meeting of July 20th.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
Charpentier seconds,
Roll call vote. Member Charpentier,
yes?
Member Cook,
Yes.
Member Gradwall,
Yes.
Member Sergeant,
Yes.
Member Gullah,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
yes.
and Member Sherman.
Yes,
Okay, thank you all very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night. Okay, we're into new business. We have do you know, Greg, did a DEP number drop on this one?
I had not seen it. I think Deb checked yesterday and hadn't seen a number yet. I can
Okay.
check one more time while you start discussing it.
Okay, so we have notice of intent. We do not have a DEP number for 19 Essex Avenue. Eugene McDonough, either representing or the applicant.
I'm not sure I see anyone that's logged in. If you're representing this application, you can raise your hand. There's only 3 attendees left. I know one is for an extension request and another is for a request for a certificate of compliance.
Why don't we table that then and just circle
Okay.
back? If you see a hand come up, we'll let them get in.
Okay,
Okay, let's move on to other commission business then. We have extension 0282510, 14 to 18 Hart Street. Christy De Silva representing, or owner, or both?
I believe it's the owner representing, and I see that she is in the attendees. I can allow her to speak.
That'd be great, thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi. Yep, name and address for the record, please.
Christy De Silva and 14 Hart Street.
Mhm. And you want an extension, why?
Well, I came on here last year and I asked for an extension and I only asked for a year because I honestly thought it would be done by then. Since then, I have been chasing him and begging him and pleading him to finish.
Who's
And
him?
my builder, Chris McCarthy.
Oh, okay.
And I just am having a really difficult time getting him to finish. Keep saying it's gonna be next week, next week, next week. He just has to do the plantings and give me the as-built plan, and the fence is up, everything else is done. I'm not really sure when he's gonna finish. So I just didn't wanna not file for an extension just in case. I was hoping to be done with this already.
So if we give you another year, you're confident that will be it?
Well, I was confident last year, so yes, I'm hoping.
Well, you have one more by right, I think, so.
Yeah, I'm hoping it'll be done next week because supposedly he's ordered the plants and they're supposed to be being installed last week and the week before and the week before and the week before. So hopefully next week it would be done, which would be great, but just to be safe, I'm just asking for a year again.
Okay.
But if we usually give it a 2-year plant life
Okay.
Mortality, you mean?
mortality, so should we go with 2 years?
Well, I was told, Adrian told me that it was like two growth cycles or something like that, and I
Yeah, 2
wasn't
growing seasons.
two growing. Yeah, so I'm not sure. Honestly, I'm new to this. I'm not, whatever you guys need, whatever I'll do. I'm not really sure.
I
So
would
it
think,
is,
yeah, I would think that's already built in then.
What's built in.
Yeah, that we give her an extension for a year and then it's 2 growing seasons before the certificate of compliance can be awarded.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm misunderstanding, but when I had talked to Adrian before she left, she said that I could do the plantings, they could come do the, certificate of compliance to show that it was done, and then I had to wait 2 cycles or something to get the whatever you just said.
certificate of compliance. correct.
Certificate of compliance, yes.
Okay. So that's
But
all.
I mean, I could be wrong. I'm asking you guys because I'm not really sure. I'm just, I wish that he was on this call, not me.
No,
honestly.
that's fine. It's pretty straightforward. I think you're fine. You'll be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Commissioner Jackson moves to approve a 1-year extension for EXT 0282510, 14 to 18 Hart Street.
Charpentier seconds.
Roll call vote. Member Charpentier,
Yes.
Member Cook,
Yes.
Member Gradwall,
Yes,
Member Sergeant,
Yes,
Member Gullah,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes,
and Member Sherman.
Yes,
You're all set.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
You too. Hopefully I won't see you next year. Have a good night.
Good luck.
You too.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up is certificates of compliance. What are we doing here, Greg? Have you looked, or are these, what do we do here?
There is someone here to represent the first, and I can speak on the second one, I think.
Okay, so we have the RCOC 28-279245 Norwood Heights, Annisquam Lighthouse, U.S. Coast Guard, Kelly Giles from Renova Environmental Company.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. So I had coordinated this with Adrian before she left, and Debbie. Debbie had actually told me that I didn't need to attend this meeting, but I figured I would just attend and see how it goes. So we finished up our soil remediation project at the lighthouse. Everything was backfilled. Everything had been seeded. We've got some good grass growth established. All of the bushes and trees that we had gone over with Adrian during her site visit have been replaced. There was one black cherry tree that she had specified needed to be replaced with a black cherry tree, but our landscaper had difficulty sourcing that species. So we swapped it out with an American holly. I have an email from Adrian confirming that was acceptable. But otherwise, we're pretty much completed here. We're just requesting the certificate so we can pull the silt fence down and demobilize from the property.
Greg, do you want to do roll call comments for the commissioners? Just make sure everyone's on board with this.
Sure. Member Charpentier,
No comments.
Member Cook,
No comments.
Member Gradwell,
No comment.
Member Sergeant,
No comment.
Member Gullo,
No comment.
Member Jackson,
No comment.
and Member Sherman.
No comment.
Okay.
Thanks,
That's
everyone.
it.
Can I just ask quickly, can we pull the silt fence at this point, or do I need to wait for the actual certificate to be issued?
I don't think it's a problem to
Okay,
pull it now.
excellent. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Jackson moves to approve certificate of compliance RCOC 0282792 at 45 Norwood Heights.
Carpentier seconds.
Roll call vote. Member Charpentier,
Yes.
Member Cook,
Yes.
Member Gradwell,
Yes.
Member Sergeant,
Yes.
Member Gullo,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
and Member Sherman.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank
You're
you,
all
everybody.
set. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Next up. RCOC 20-13679 Mechanic Place, Kevin and Kathy or Kath Vieira. And you have some information for this?
Yeah, so you should have seen in the drive, there was the request was, this was an order that was issued back in 2001. The project never moved forward. And they are looking to, I think, convey. So it came up in the chain of title and they're just looking for a certificate of compliance. The project was never implemented.
Okay. So why don't you do roll call comment votes on the commission to make sure they're all on board?
Member Charpentier,
No comments.
Member Cook,
No comments.
Member Gradwell,
No comment.
Member Sergeant,
No comment.
Member Gullo,
No comment.
Member Jackson,
No comment.
and Member Sherman.
No comment.
Okay, with that, I guess we can move it.
Commissioner Jackson moves to approve RCOC 0281367 at 9 Mechanic Place.
Carpentier seconds.
Roll call vote. Member Charpentier,
Yes.
Member Cook,
Yes.
Member Gradwell,
Yes.
Member Sergeant,
Yes.
Member Gullo,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
Yes.
and Member Sherman.
Yes.
Excellent. Next up, request for, this is the request for emergency certification, 115 East Main Street, Jiminy Land Trust LLC for emergency seawall riprap repair. I will have to recuse from this, Anjo, I think it's, so if you don't mind.
Okay. Do we have a representative?
I think so.
Good
Yeah,
evening.
he's here, John Dick.
Yeah, John Dick. I am not with Hancock anymore. I'm retired and working independently. We've got a site here, East Gloucester Marina, which has several tenants in several buildings. The address is 115, 123 East Main Street. There's a lot going on out there. And in 1981 or 82, I think, Matt Hotela did a Chapter 91 plan of the existing wharves out there. I suspect, although that's plenty old, that the wharf is plenty older. And went down there, I guess about a week ago now, took a look at a situation where there's a lobster pound down there right now, big metal building on the wharf. It actually sits out over the water on the wharf. And underneath that metal building is some stone cribbing and some concrete footings. It looks to me as though at one time there may have been a wooden bulkhead held in place by pilings with stone fill behind it. The stone that you can see in the photograph in my draft narrative is very small. Those stones are, many of them no bigger than my hand. They're very irregular. There doesn't appear to be any mortar. It looks like backfill behind an old bulkhead. The bulkhead's gone. There's a building sitting on top of this wall. There's a wharf sitting on top of this wall. There is a lot of infrastructure, cooling and pumps and so forth sitting up there. Long story short, it needs emergency repairs. And we have filled out an emergency certificate. We've had the building inspector down there. We have approached the harbor master. The harbor master is in a situation where he owns property adjacent to the site, so he can't really speak. The building inspector wants a structural analysis. We can't find an engineer who will touch this thing for a couple of months. I'm very concerned that this thing is going into the harbor before that, and whatever's sitting on top of it is going with it. Thus, the request for an emergency certificate. We're in the process of putting together a notice of intent for any additional work that proves necessary. But at present, what you've got before you is a sketch by Under Pressure Construction showing a pinned concrete pour right in front of those stones to hold them in place temporarily. And that's the end of it. There will probably have to be pilings driven. There will probably be an amendment to the 1982 Chapter 91 plan. But at this point, I just don't know. All I can tell you is we've got one bad picture of this section of wall that scares the living daylights out of me. I'm not an engineer. I'm certainly not a structural engineer. We can't get a structural engineer out there in time to assure ourselves that this building will remain in place, never mind keep a tenant in the building. And the Conservation Commission appears to be the last avenue of appeal unless you give us a denial and we have to go to DEP for an emergency cert. I'm not sure how that will play out because, again, we need a public official to sign off on this, and there is no public official willing or able to do that. I leave it in your hands. It's an emergency situation, in my opinion, but my opinion doesn't matter. I'm not a public official in Gloucester.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, forgot Robert Hughes there. Okay, commissioner comments. Greg, can you go through?
Member Charpentier.
I would support the emergency order or request.
Member Cook.
Yeah, boy, this is a tough one. I'm a little concerned because without having seen it, but I'd like a little bit more information about what is actually going to be done, because what it sounded like was where all the riprap is, you want to just cover it all with cement. If I was reading that correctly, and I don't think we could approve that on an emergency cert to go in and start, basically filling over riprap with cement to stabilize it. Not on an emergency cert. That's my concern. And if the city engineer, he should be able to either say, it's a risk and shut down it. Then there's a city engineer that can sign off on it. But I'd be concerned about how we're going to what you're actually going to do and how we're going to do it without having any firm plan.
Want me to take these one by one or wait for all the comment?
Why don't you wait for all of them, Mr. Dick? Thank you.
You betcha. Thank you.
Member Gradwell.
No further comment at this time.
Member Sargent.
I really need to know, are you proposing to permanently encroach further into the intertidal zone on a permanent basis, or would this be on a temporary basis?
Okay, Member Jackson.
My understanding from when I looked at the plans was it was going to be kind of a concrete wall in front of the revetment. And I'm wondering, and I share Mr. Cook's concerns and Mr. Sargent's of encroaching, wondering if perhaps an emergency certification could approve perhaps like wire netting to keep the revetment in place. And you were going to replace some pilings. Can you tell us if they're going to be replaced or added to? And if you take out the old pilings, are you cutting them off? These kinds of things. We have a few more details perhaps. Okay.
And then last, member Sherman.
Nothing other than what has already been stated.
Okay, Mr. Dick.
Now it's my turn. Okay.
It is.
The revetment, the riprap, is backfill. It's not a sloping surface. It's not freestone in the sense that it was placed in an angle of repose. It's a vertical feature. It looks for all the world like backfill behind a wooden bulkhead, which was a very common way of building wharves back in the day. They would build a wooden bulkhead, then they'd throw whatever the hell they could find behind it and stick planking on top of it and call it a wharf. It's 100 years old. We are proposing a vertical wall against this surface. It must by its nature be a temporary feature. We aren't proposing any pilings at this time because pilings would be an encroachment. I don't know, frankly, whether there were pilings in place there holding the old planks up or whether this is an open span. The photograph you're looking at is about an 8-foot section in between two existing pilings. And again, I'm not a structural engineer, but the pilings look sound to me. They're not leaning, they're not compromised, they're not fractured or bowing. So my inclination would be that this will be a temporary fix pending structural analysis and a true notice of intent and a Chapter 91 amendment to address any encroachment. But for this time, all we're proposing is this wall pinned into an existing concrete footing in front of, if you will, this vertical stone wall.
Is this going to be those prefab concrete, huge concrete blocks, and you're going to build it up?
No, we have some of them in there already, and how long they've been there, I have no idea. They look like they've been there long enough to get displaced by frost and energy, but I can't tell you. All I can say is it looks for all the world as if there was a wooden bulkhead behind which there was stone backfill, small stones, and in front of that wall there are several, if you will, knee stones down low, down in the intertidal. They're fairly stable. We're proposing to pin a pour into those stones and bring the face of that wall all the way up across the stone in order to maintain the stability of the wharf. It's a partial solution. It is clearly a temporary solution. Anything else that needs to be done beyond that scope would have to be done under a notice of intent because it would be new work. What I can do within the scope of an emergency certification is I can add a more detailed description to the draft emergency cert and try once again to find some public official who will show some interest in signing that certification. I emphasize, we've talked to the building inspector on a couple of occasions. We've talked to the harbor master. I spoke today with the engineering office. They didn't want to touch it with somebody else's 10-foot pole. I understand their reservations. I also understand that structures fall down all the time. If it falls down day after tomorrow, I'll call the Conservation Commission, get somebody down there, and maybe we can get it signed then. It may be worse, it may not be worse. I don't know. It may not fall down. But that's how an emergency cert works. You show a public official, and the term public official is very broad. It could be the ward councilor, I think. You show them the situation. In their best judgment, they say, it looks like an emergency to me, and they sign this thing. And frankly, I don't even have to come to the commission. I just have to send you a copy, and I've got 30 days to work on it. And if anything else has to be done, then I have to file a notice of intent for that, or I have to do another emergency cert. But it's needlessly complicated by asking for structural analysis that we know in this busy time and season is going to take an awful long time. And no structural engineer in his right mind is going to touch a 100-year-old wharf. It's just out of the question. So that's what I put before you. You're kind of the court of last resort. And as I said, I may call you next week and say, hey, look, it's getting worse. I may call you next week and say, hey, look, we've got a better design. But I kind of think we won't, because I kind of think nobody's going to want to take this job on the basis of an engineering design. I think it's always going to be some kind of fix. That's just the way it is with old wharfs.
Okay, because the current emergency cert says the concrete, putting concrete foundation in.
Yes.
But then it also says replacing the pilings. So
Yes, that's been taken off the
condition in
table.
order-
I'm sorry.
Can we condition an emergency cert to say it's okay to stabilize the wall, but no pilings?
No pilings. Yes, you certainly can. Yes. And in fact, you can condition the whole thing upon the filing of a notice of intent.
I think that's very
That's a good
important,
idea.
particular one. Greg, is it possible for you to put up the drawing on the regulatory narrative that shows the drawing of the concrete in front of the revetment? It sounds like not everybody has seen that.
Yep, 1 second.
It's
Yeah.
kind of fresh.
Hold on. So you're looking for the photograph or the drawing?
The drawing of the concrete wall in
Okay.
front of the revetment.
Yep.
Concrete never strikes me as being temporary.
Yeah, I hear that.
Well, that's why I was wondering if it was blocks versus poured concrete.
Yeah, there it is. And it's rotated.
Yeah. I don't think I have the ability to rotate that.
Okay, it needs to go 90 degrees counterclockwise for those looking at it.
Yeah, you
And
see where
here's
it's,
the photograph example.
yeah, there you can see the stones, and that one in the center of the picture, the center of the stones, that's about the size of my head. So some of those things aren't much bigger than my fist, and essentially they're just being held in there by gravity.
Okay, Mr. Dick, how extensive is this concrete?
The photograph you're looking at is about an 8-foot span. I don't think there's a heck of a lot more than that is of immediate concern, but I have only seen this site once. I managed to pick a morning when it was very high tide. I didn't even see these stones except in the photographs. So I'd have to tell the commission, I haven't personally seen these exposed concrete footings or stone.
Is it possible to do like a wire netting to keep them in place until?
I don't think it would hold. If that stone decides to move, that's about an 8-foot revetment between the wharf and the bottom. That's the full tidal range right there.
Okay. If we approve this, it definitely would be contingent upon an NOI and one that should address maintenance of this site. It concerns me because this looks like something that they should have seen coming.
I don't disagree.
Yeah. It says on the requirements to obtain an emergency certificate, the commission must have sufficient information prepared, submitted, etc. The information may include the exact location, a detailed scope of work, what activities are going to occur, with what heavy equipment would be involved, a general construction sequence, an estimated timeline, the limit of work on a sketch or plan, equipment, personnel access information, how will the site be reached, contingency information in case something goes wrong, contact information. And we can only approve actions required to remedy the emergency situation, which you were correct, I think, in withdrawing the pilings. But I think we're missing an awful lot of that information.
May I talk as well?
Sure.
I'm wondering why not put concrete blocks in front on a temporary basis to prevent collapse of the fill. And then when they do an NOI, that the whole situation could be dealt with. But by pouring concrete, you're creating a permanent encroachment into the intertidal zone, in my opinion. And beyond that, Mr. Dix said structural engineers will not deal with 100-year-old wharfs. They're required to, under city ordinance, to look at wharfs ever since West Wharf collapsed. And the building inspector has to take that into account. This is done routinely. So I really don't think that enough information has been presented to do a permanent pour in front of, what he wants, because I believe that's an encroachment.
Mr. Dick, what do you think of that idea?
I think you make a reasonable argument. I can get busy tomorrow morning and get you a lot of the detail necessary for the emergency cert. I would ask that either a member of the commission or Greg, or maybe I can get the building inspector to take a look at this. He just seemed disinclined to do anything until he had a structural engineer's report, and that's an impossible circumstance from the point of view of doing an emergency repair. And as I said, there is always the option of appealing this. I'm not going to make a big deal of it. I'm not going to ask for a denial tonight. I would simply ask that the commission leave this open and maybe keep an ear tuned out for a cry for help. I'll try to get in touch as soon as I know more.
We're absolutely willing to do that. Keep in mind that our next meeting is not until July 20th.
Bingo. And let me emphasize, an emergency cert doesn't require a meeting of the commission. It only requires the signature of a public official. I have got
Okay.
emergency certifications signed by the agent.
Yeah, okay.
I know that's a sore point, but
And well, the current agent recognizes our feelings and has heard our input.
Yeah,
So-
I would just add, you mentioned that the building department and a couple of people have taken a look. I don't think anybody started throwing emergency lights or telling anybody to get out of a building. I understand, that the difficulty of getting somebody, to look at this, but at the same time, a quick proposal to drill into an existing concrete block and then pin to it. That's why we have engineers.
yep, I don't disagree.
And I don't disagree that if Bill Sanborn or Donald Belanger says tomorrow, it's a lot worse than we thought it looked, and they're willing to sign off on it, then so be it. That's their job. They're supposed to look at those things. And short of that, this may not be what you would do if an engineer was to take a hard look at it.
I can assure you I will have seen it at low tide tomorrow, and I'll get you everything I can as soon as I can to back up the emergency cert. I really do think this is worthy of an emergency cert. I realize we're kind of a day late and $1 short coming to the meeting, but I wanted to get this before the commission.
Yeah, and I like the idea of using the precast blocks and just have them hoisted into position and drop down.
Interesting idea. Yeah, it would certainly help. Yeah.
And that gives all the appearances of being temporary.
Right.
Yeah, and for all practical intents and purposes, it is temporary. Yeah.
Okay, so what do? We don't want to deny this. We just table it. And if you come back with the information Greg can sign it if need be. Does
Yep.
that work? Does that work?
I'll make a better argument and we'll go from there.
Yeah,
Okay.
Greg can sign it because Adrian used to always sign, she'd
Yeah.
always approve them and then
Yeah.
come back to us for the board's
Yeah.
approval. But
Yeah,
she
hear
would
that,
just
Greg?
sign off on it.
Okay, is there anybody on the commission who objects to this? Okay.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Why don't we do that? We'll consider this tabled and let you come back with more information and present it to whoever will take care of it for you.
Appreciate it. Good to see you all
And-
again.
Good to see you. Congratulations on your retirement.
Oh, that's been a long time.
Oh, well, I'm just catching up to things.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good night.
Okay, good night. Okay, Greg, is there anything else?
I think that concludes your business for now.
Excellent.
And your next regular meeting is on July 20th, so enjoy the break.
Looking forward to it. If there was ever a time it was needed, it's right now, I can tell you. Okay.
Sorry to leave you hanging there on that one, Joe. I didn't know I just happened to do work for the owner, so I didn't want to
Yeah,
get-
no, I.
get into a
Not a
pickle.
problem. Not a problem. As you heard, probably, there were a lot of questions.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Rob, do you want to ask for a motion to adjourn?
Yes, man, someone want to move to adjourn this lovely evening?
Oh, I guess I can now that you're back.
Yeah.
Jack moves to adjourn.
Carpentier seconds.
All right,
Roll call vote. Member Charpentier,
Yes.
Member Cook,
Yes.
Member Gradwell,
Yes.
Member Sergeant,
Yes.
Member Gullah,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
yes.
and Member Sherman.
Yes.
This is the part of the meeting, Greg, when we try. Where were you on vacation for 2 weeks?
Do you really want to know?
Yes.
I was in
already
Hawaii.
know.
I was in Hawaii.
Very nice, very nice.
Yes, it was fantastic. It was a repeat of a trip that my wife and I did 28 years ago, but
Oh,
with our
that's
kids.
great. Which
So it
island,
was-
or were there many?
We went to Oahu and also to Kauai, and
Nice.
that was definitely the highlight of the trip.
So
it's a
the
great
kids
place.
didn't come?
Oh, no, they did. They did.
Oh, okay,
We
good.
10 days of hiking and 30 beaches, and it was snorkeling. It was great. It was
That's
great.
Now you're well rested up to become the interim commissioner. I mean,
Hey,
agent.
just keep giving me another hat. I'll take it.
All right, everybody.
Everybody
Thanks,
stay
Greg,
safe.
for
Right,
stepping
happy
in like you
Fourth.
are.
Hey, quick
See you next
question
month.
Quick question, who had one?
I had, Greg. So the plan is to hire a new agent and an assistant agent?
Yes, so when we had discussions during the budget, and I think I may have shared this in an email with you folks as well. I mean, I have been advocating for a long time that, we need to have that department staffed appropriately, given, the number of filings that we have in, we're the highest in the Commonwealth. And over the years, initially, the city used to support the position at a 75% from the general fund, and only 25% of the salary came from the conservation fees or the conservation funds. And over time, that continued to get whittled in lean years to where it was almost the inverse of 75 coming from fees and 25 from the general fund, to where it is now, where it's a self-funded operation from fees, which has worked out okay with the staffing level that it's been at. But we took a hard look at the budget. We're confident that for the next year, we can, have 2 full-time staff positions with knowledge and experience with Wetlands Protection Act and as an agent. So we had kind of the benefit of Deb has been around for a while. She has she's retiring soon. And, her salary and her hourly rate are fairly high because of her longevity with the city. So we will be able to hire a full-time assistant agent position at around the same salary that's been allocated for her position. So we are having interviews starting tomorrow for the agent position. There's a good applicant pool, and possibly, we might even have some efficiency in getting a second person, because I think there's some folks that are probably well suited to be the assistant agent in the same pool, provided they're comfortable with the job description and the salary proposed, which is slightly less than the agent position. So the administration was supportive of not only the staffing level, but really kind of taking a look at this next budget season to consider whether or not there needs to be some general fund allocation for the department. So hopefully we'll see how it goes with two staff. The assistant position will also kind of do some of the administrative piece of noticing that would be part of the job description. So some of the activities in the office that are really more kind of just the administration side of it, but with the hope that they'll also be able to take in the inquiries and have two staff with the knowledge and abilities to help administer the commission's work.
Or do you need us to lobby?
At this point, no. The budget was approved last night, and it has those two full-time positions in it. Next budget season, if it looks like it's something that we need to start thinking about in terms of having some funding, that would probably be the time to do that.
Okay, thank you.
So is the process going to be that we're going to find a lead person, and then the assistant, that person's going to be involved in selecting the assistant, or we're going to try and do them all together? What's the game?
I think we'll probably be responsible for the hires. I wouldn't put that responsibility on a brand new person.
Right, that's what I figured.
It's really the skill set, the fit, for the position. It's just a matter of, we can't post for the new position until the next budget year. So we'll be doing that shortly, so hopefully we secure somebody in the next 2 to 3 weeks for the agent position. And on the heels of that, we'll advertise the other. And again, we might have the opportunity to reach out to, if we interview a great candidate, that there's just an even better one, then we can certainly reach back to that person and encourage them to apply for the other position. I also, would note, and then it's dozens of applicants, which is a great thing, because we certainly have had some experience over the last, year or two where we've had very thin fields. And so, some of them are, look like they have, great educational background, some interest in the field, but no experience in the field yet. And that might be the perfect candidate for the assistant position. So hopefully we have some real good luck in the next couple of weeks.
Excellent. All right, Greg. Everybody,
Okay.
Be well.
Okay.
Bye,
Enjoy.
everyone.
Take care.
Thank you, Greg. Bye-bye.